In this video, I will show how to create items in Business Central. And in this case, I want to create an rim as a new item. So from my sales menu or other menus that contain items, I will go to my item list. And here I can click New for creating a new item. If I want to add the specific item number, I'll have to show all the fields. And in this case, I like to define the number of the item. And of course also the description. This is an rim. And my base unit of measure, in this case pieces, on the first tab. My inventory tab is basically for showing all kinds of figures on the item, and it fills out automatically. On my cost tab, I can define whether it's a standard cost or a first in, first out item. In this case, I will select a standard cost item and the cost will be 35. My general product posting group will be item purchase. In my case, you can define that of course by yourself, and I'll select my inventory posting group here as well. On my price sheet, I could select the unit price if it's a sales item, but in this case I will only use it in a hierarchy, so I wouldn't mind for that. On replenishment tab, I could select whether it's a purchase item, a sample item, or if I have a premium version of Business Central, I could also use production order items. And I can select a lead time calculation, for instance 21 days, and a vendor number that I will purchase this item from. Oh, and the default went back here like this. And the manufacturing or production and assembly figure shouldn't be filled out because this is a purchase item. If I have a vendor item number, I could enter it here. On my planning tab, if I want to plan on this item, I could say how to plan it. In this case, I would like to plan on type order because I only want to buy this item when I actually have a specific demand. So I will buy this item to order. Of course, if you plan with other reordering policies, you can add that here on the reordering tab and then also fill in the corresponding parameters here, and you can see that in videos for planning. The item card in Business Central is divided into different tabs, and on each tab you can open the tab, and you can show more fields if you want to see all of the fields, and this gives you an overview of the item card. First of all, we have the item tabs, which includes general information on the item. Then we have the inventory tabs, which includes a lot of calculated fields displaying all the quantities on inventory, etc., and some basic information on the items. Then we have a tab for cost and posting, which is all the costing of course on the item and where the posting enters in the chart of accounts, and some of the reporting information. Then we have a tab for price and sales, and that's mostly used by the salespeople for the sales price and information about the sales side. The replenishment tab, the next one, is how to replenish the item, not how to plan it, but how to replenish it either by production, purchase, or assembly, and the parameters related to that. Then we have the planning tab, where we set up all the information used in the planning worksheets, the requisition worksheet. The item tracking tabs, where we define information about how to trace the item with serial or lot numbers. And in the end, the warehouse tab with information that can be used in the warehouse on how to handle the item. These are the tabs on the item card. When you create new items in Business Central, there are some fields that you need to fill out, some basic fields, and those are across departments. So even if it's a sales item or purchase item or whatever, those fields should be entered for all items. It's around 7 fields. I'll just show you them in this video shortly. First of all, the item number needs to be unique. You can enter it manually, which most of our clients are doing. You could also select it from a number series, just counting up 1, and that's a unique number. The item description is actually not mandatory, but normally you would have this information or this description to see what the item is when you sell and purchase it and handle it. So this should normally also be filled in. The base unit of measure is a mandatory field, and you enter here the base unit that the item normally is handled in your inventory at the lowest level or the counting level. So we used to say it's the counting unit of measure you enter here, and that has to be filled in. And be aware that this field or this information cannot be changed easily if you first have posted the item. And if we go to the cost and posting tab, the costing method needs to be filled in. The normal ones are the first in, first out, or the standard, but in another video we will go more into detail about the different costing method. And this is also a mandatory field, and it's complex to change, or take some time to change if you have posted on the items. So be aware of what you select here. And then you need to fill in the posting groups, the general product posting group, VID product posting group, and the inventory posting group that displays or determines where the posting on item should be put in the chart of accounts, in the income statement, or the balance when you handle the item. So these are the mandatory field that you should enter on all your items. On the item card, we have some more advanced fields, which are also across departments, meaning it's fields that is used by both salespeople, purchasers, planning people, warehouse, etc. And I will just show you some of those fields in this video that doesn't relate to a specific department. First of all, we have the fields blocked. This determines if the item should be blocked from transactions, so you cannot post anything on the item. We have the type field, where you can select if this is an inventory item that we are counting and storing and handling in the inventory, or if it's a non-inventory or a service item that you only want to use for services, meaning you don't want the warehouse people to handle them. Then you can select the two other types down here. And of course, this should be done up front when you create the item. We have a field here with the automatically extended text. If you select that one and the item has extended text attached in the extended text table, then it will automatically be pasted into purchase and sales document according to the setup in the extended text. So without this check mark, you need to manually pull the extended text into the order documents. On the inventory tab, we have a field called prevent negative inventory, which is default no. And the difference between default no and no is that when it says no, you can see that somebody has actually selected no, whereas default no indicates that nobody has looked into this field specifically. The prevent negative inventory makes it possible to prevent that the item is drawn negatively, meaning you cannot sell the item if you don't have enough on inventory. If this is set to no, it's possible to sell the item even though it's not yet on stock on inventory. Then we have all the calculated fields, the inventory displaying how many items we have on inventory. And if you look up into this field, you can see the item ledger entries with all the remaining quantities, and it sums up the remaining quantities. It's actually summing on quantity, but it should be the same as the remaining quantity. So this is all your item ledger entry. And likewise on all the other calculated fields, quantity on purchase order looks into purchase order, quantity on production order. If you look into the 130, you can see the production order list here. So this way, those fields cannot be entered on the item card, but those are calculated manually. Those are calculated automatically. Quantity on component line is the quantity that goes into the production order on the production order component list. So this is a demand, whereas the quantity on production order is a supply. Likewise, the quantity on sales order and service orders are demands. Quantity on job order is if you have items assigned to a job on a job planning line. Quantity on assembly order is the supply coming from an assembly order, and the quantity on assembly order component is the demand for the assembly order component lines. So these are all information fields that is used by most department using Business Central. In Business Central, we have more than 100 different action buttons available here in the action ribbon. And of course, we cannot tell all of them in one video, and it wouldn't make sense. So some of them are specific for salespeople, some of them for purchasers, etc. And in this video, I will show you some of the functionality which is meant to work across all the departments. So some of the action buttons that is used across departments. First of all, if we go to the item action, we have the attachment and the attributes. Attachment will be files that I could attach to the item. In this case, I have attached a PDF file with a blanket agreement from a vendor, and I can attach as many files as I wanted in here. And I could preview the file here, and I can open the file in here by clicking it. So it's just a matter of selecting the attachment you would like to attach. The attribute fields is a functionality where you can define metadata on the item, as many as you want. In this scenario, I have added a brand as attribute, and I have defined some value option for that. So I could select different value option across items. And on this item, this is a tour spoke excellent, for instance, and I can select millimeter defined by a decimal field, etc. So it's possible to define a lot of attributes for my item. If I go to my Navigate tab, on my item functionality, I have the cross-reference window, and the cross-reference window is a table where I can set up how this item is defined in other environment than just on my item card. So for instance, on my vendor side, if I'm buying this item from the vendor number 30,000, this could be his item number when I'm buying it in cartoon, or if I'm buying it from another vendor in pieces, this could be his item number. If I'm selling it to this customer, it has a cross-reference number. If I use barcode myself on a cartoon or on pieces, I could set it up in here. So this is a way of identifying this specific item number depending on different cross-references. So in this table, I can set up all different ways of identifying my items. And if I go further into my item list from the Navigate tab, I have my unit of measure. In the item unit of measure table, I could set up different units that this item could be handled in. So in this scenario, my base unit of measure, which is bolded here, has a quantity of 1. It has to have the base unit of measure. And in one cartoon, it takes 25 pieces in this scenario, and I can set up so many item unit of measure as I want to for the specific item. And this can be changed and handled on all my documents. Further into my item menus, I have my extended text. In the extended text, it's possible to add text that I want to use on this item for my order documents, and I can set up here in the extended text if it has to apply to purchase item, or the purchase side or the sell side, and I can define more than one extended text per item, and there's other videos to explain that in detail, so I'll not go into that. And I can define translations that I can go into and define what is this item called in different languages. So if I sell to a customer that has a language code, it will find the translation in here. And if there's no translation, it will take the default description on the item card. And in the substitution table, I can determine if I have other items that could substitute this item, and this is used also on the sales and purchase side. So on a sales order, if I don't have enough of the specific item the customer is asking for, I can look after substitutions directly on the item line to see if I have some items to substitute this one. And on my Navigate tab on availability, I have comments that I can enter on this item. In this scenario, if we buy more than 100,000, we should buy it from a specific vendor, or we should be aware that buy it in millimeter, not inches, etc. This is set in as text line in the database, so I can search for comments and use comments as text options. Whereas if I go into the function show attached and further into notes, I could also define notes, but this is saved in the system as a blob field, we call it. It's technical stuff, but it's more like a free text area that I can write whatever I want to and save it into the database. So it's also possible to save larger amount of text, which is just written in free prosa. On the show attached tab, there's also a link functionality where I can set up URLs. So if I'm buying this item from a vendor and I want to add the homepage here or whatever links, I could define them in here in my link setup. There's a lot of functionality for approval. I'll not go into this because we have other videos showing about this, but if I look at my request approval tab, I can send approvals, I can cancel my approvals, I can go into my flows, which is not actually in Business Central, but it's Microsoft Flow functionality where I could define other kinds of approvals. And if we go into actions and workflow, there's more functionality about approvals. This is all about having this item approved when we create new items, for instance, or we change items and we want somebody to check it and to approve it. If I go to actions, and items, I can define item variance. Item variance is used to determine if this item is actually understood in more different items. For instance, here it's painted black, or it's a chrome, or it's a white item. So normally we would suggest not to use this item variance and use different item numbers instead. But in some industries, you will have to define item variance to make the system work. So if you have, for instance, sizes and clothes, you have for large and small, etc. Many customers would like to have one item number for specific shirts and then the different sizes in here, and you can define item variance in that. But those are handled actually on an inventory level, so the inventory people will have to state both the item number and the item variant number on all documents and all places where the item is handled. So you have to be quite aware of using item variant. If I go to actions and functions, I can also find templates. I have here template and apply template and save as template. This will be defined in other videos, but shortly it's about defining item templates where it will pre-fill a lot of the fields or some of the field on the item. So if I know that an item has a specific template, for instance a shirt, it's easy for me to pre-fill a lot of those fields that would be automatically filled in. So it's an easier way of creating new items from templates. This was some of the specific fields in Business Central on the item card that is used across many different departments. In this video, I want to show you how to calculate standard cost on an item which is a production item. From my menu, I will enter the item list, and I've made a hierarchy on a new item number that I call City Bike Alloy Rim, and that contains a new bill of material, but an existing routing. Now the standard cost is 0 because I didn't calculate it yet. So from my Navigate tab, I can go into my bill of materials. And because this is a production item, I will go into production, calculate standard cost. And here I can choose top level if I only want to go one level down, or I can choose all level if I want to calculate the complete hierarchy of this item, and press OK. And it would update my standard cost, which is now on this item 1,729, etc. In this video, I will show you how to set up item discounts, line discounts, and invoice discounts on a customer. So from Business Central, from my customer list, I will enter the specific customer that I would like to provide some discounts. And from my Navigate tab, I can go into prices and discounts for the specific customer. So first of all, I could set prices, which is discounts for specific items. So in this case, I could take my item number that I created that I want to sell and enter a minimum quantity and a unit price for the specific item. So when this customer buys this item, at least 10 pieces, this is the price. I could also set a starting and ending date and thereby determine the prices in specific date intervals. Likewise, if I go into my line discounts, I could say that for this item, when this customer buys this item, like this, and he buys at least 100, I will provide him 5% discount. So now I set up discounts in two different ways on the same item on the same customer, which would normally not be done. But again, here you can have a starting date and you can set a line discount instead of a specific discount for this item. And the last thing I could do was to set up an invoice discount. So this means when the customer buys a total of whatever amount, he could have some discounts. So in this case, I could say if he buys in Danish crowns, at least 100,000, like this, I will give him a 3% discount. So after setting all of this up, this should take effect into the sales orders when I create sales order. And I can also see this data now if I enter my item list. I have the same view, but instead of seeing it per customer, I could see it per item. So if I enter my item number here and I go into my special prices, I can set my sales prices. And here I can see that the line that I just defined is the first one, and also define a line for another customer that buys this item a little more expensive. And again, Likewise, I could go into my prices and set special discounts and see if other customer has discounts on this item. So this is a way I can work very generically with discounts and item prices. Item purchase prices in Business Central can be set up either on the items or from the vendors. So first of all, let's look on the items, and we take an example from our spokes here. If I go into my spokes and navigate into special purchase prices, I can set special prices on this item for different vendors. So in here I have set up that buying from vendor number 30,000, this item with no currency code in unit of measure code cartoon will cost 45 crowns for a cartoon, and likewise in pieces 1.8 crown. And I've set up that from my other vendor here, 8,000, buying in euro at least 100,000, the unit cost will be 0.112 euro with a starting date back in 17, and I can see there's an upcoming starting date with another price starting from 1st of June with the same quantities. So it's possible to set up many lines differing on vendor number, item number, currency code, pieces, minimum quantity, and starting date. So there's many different parameters to distinguish between, and I can leave all the history here because the system will find the best price when creating purchase orders. So this is purchase prices seen from the item perspective. Now let's go to vendor number 88,000 and look at the purchase prices from there. So I will find my vendor list, finding the vendor down here. And again, if I navigate into my purchases, and here it's just called prices, I can see here that I've set up my item number 1120, and I can see the two lines here in the middle reflecting what was on the item side. So it's the same data I'm viewing, and of course if I'm changing it here, it will also be changed from my item perspective. But here I can also see, instead of the other vendor, other items on the same vendor. So it's the same data from different perspective, viewing from a vendor or from the item. This is how I set up specific prices on items. I can also set up discounts, and I'll show that in another video. It is possible to define line discounts per item per vendor in Business Central, and that is set up either from the vendor card or from the item card. And we can start looking here at the vendors, and the purchase discount is a percentage from the purchase price that we can define from the vendor table or the item table. So if I take my vendor number 80,000 here, go into navigate, purchases, I have line discounts in here. And I can see, for instance, on this vendor here, on item number 1110, I have a line discount of 15% starting from the 1st of June if we buy at least 50,000. On the other hand, on item number 1120, if I buy at least 150,000, my line discount is 10, and there's no starting date. So it's possible to define line discounts in here. And line discounts will be put upon the purchase price if we also define specific purchase prices. So this is how we see it from the vendor list. I could also have find the same items or the same data from the item list. We can go to the spokes and check out the purchase prices here and the special discounts. And we can see here the same line, the same data. And if I change it here, of course, it will be changed because it's the same data we're viewing. This is the way of setting up discounts specifically per vendor per item. If you have defined specific prices per item per vendor, it will have effect when you create purchase order lines for that vendor for that item. Let's take an example here from my item 1120. If I go from navigate into my special prices, I could define special prices or special discounts, and that's actually defined by fixed price or by percentages. Here in the overview, I can see a mix of both of them. So I can see here I have one line discount for that item, saying a minimum 150 pieces, line discount 10% from vendor number 88,000 in euro. And I can see different purchase prices, some of them also from the same vendor in euro, one of them with a starting date that is not active yet, when we speak, and I can see the euro amount here. And of course I also have my list price on the item card. So in this example I can see if I buy from my vendor 88,000 and I buy more than 100,000, there will be no special prices defined in that scenario. So let's try to make a purchase order. And we define a new purchase order for that vendor, just to see how it works. And we enter the item number here on the purchase line and quantity 1. And I can see now the 0.2 euro is the list price from the item card transferred into euro because this vendor is set up with euro. Whereas if I enter 100,000 pieces, which was one of the criterias, and I'll leave the line to update it. Oops. Whereas if we enter 100,000 pieces, which was one of the criterias, I can see my price changing till 0.112 euro with a sum of 11,200, because that's the one of the fixed prices. And again, if I change my quantity till 150,000, like this, I can see my price being the same, but if I calculate 0.112 times 150,000, I can see that this is only 0.9 factor of that because I've added 10% from the line discount. So this is how it works automatically on the purchase order once the price is set up correctly.
Catalog items, also called non-stock items, are not to be mistaken with non-inventory items. Let us go through each of these two. A catalog item, also known as a non-stock item, is items that you don't manage yet in your Business Central, not until you start selling them. But these items are still possible to add to sales quote lines and sales order lines. A catalog item will not be listed in the item list, but in catalog items. This, for example, could be vendor items that you know your vendor supplies, but you don't want to have them lying in your system as a normal item until you have started selling them. Non-inventory items are regular items that are given the type of non-inventory and is therefore an item type. This item type is used when you want to keep the items out of availability overviews, but they are still possible to include in production build of materials. Examples of non-inventory items are items that we use internally at low cost, such as water and electricity.